Williamson. Welcome back or welcome in. I'm Cyberstar Tectonica, your hobbyist geologist, bringing you another weekly breakdown of the seismic activity in Santorini and the surrounding region. This week, activity has decreased overall, but there are still some unusual movements worth watching. We'll analyze the latest earthquake trends, seismograms, uplift data, and population updates, plus what Anidros Island's rapid movement could mean. Let's dive in. If you want the full breakdown, stick around. If you just want the key takeaways, skip ahead to right here. You can see there's a huge difference between the past week and the past month in the depth and time graph we have here. Something rather obvious is that the quakes have dialed down in magnitude and frequency. You can see this again here with the large earthquakes during this time period on the 17th, and that was the biggest one there was a 4.3 magnitude. Much less than what we saw last week, which was a 5.2. However, you're going to see in just a few minutes that it depends on which data you look at. This one says it was a 4.3. You'll see later on. This is a look at all of the earthquakes during this time period. There's a centralized location where they kind of occupy, and they kind of spread along the fault lines of the area, which I have a map for you in a little bit. We first saw earthquakes beneath Santorini when this started. Now we're seeing them again, but deeper. This is likely signaling adjustment and not like a new eruption risk or anything, just tectonic settlement. Here's a look at the largest earthquakes that happened during that time frame. There are two different ones, and they are on two different fault lines, but they both happened at the same depth, most likely due to this westward movement of the center island Anidros. They are possibly related, and they did happen on the same day at the same depth, and only an hour apart. It's interesting because it shows here that they are the 5.1 magnitude, where previously it was shown that they were 4.3 maximum. But I did confirm this data on USGS, and this is a look at the spread of all the data we saw during this recent period. And look at this. There are fault lines that run through the area, and you can see Santorini here, Anidros here, and Amorgos up at the top right. And if you want to see this for yourself, there are links in the description where you can pause this video and admire the intricate details of the geology yourself. Let's take a look at our station. Oh wait, Sant is no longer with us. I do have a new station. And this is time to introduce Farah. And it is literally right next to our previous station, just like slightly southern and slightly eastern compared to where it was before. And this is the one that we are using in our live stream. I have noticed the station is a bit more sensitive than the last station, and it kind of makes it easier to notice the surges, whether they're small or large. And when we see a big quake, it's very noticeable. All right, so now it's time to get into the direct data of the seismograms that we saw during this time frame. And this is what happened last week as a quick recap. And you can see how dramatic it was on the 12th, where we saw that huge surge. But this is this week. Here we can see the 16th, 17th, and 18th. We can see that there's some smaller surges, as well as some few larger earthquakes. Here's the 19th, 20th, and 21st. You can see starting late on 19th, a surge, we'll call it, started up and started making the ground move at a base level far more frequently. It does seem like this is where we saw the drop-off slightly, where the earthquakes were not as large or frequent. It's possible this surge allows for the ground to settle and move and shift smoothly, rather than having like large shifts where the earthquakes would be much more notable. Not sure, but it's highly possible because it's, you know, like shifting sand rather than like slamming two big rocks together, right? This is the last day that we saw the time period where we see the surge, and the ground seems to be stabilizing, though we do see a few large earthquakes continuing, of course. Still nothing like we saw even last week. It's interesting to see how dynamic the land movement can be through all of this. I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at this. This is data from the station over the past 2 months. This is from the 2nd of January, virtually nothing. This is from the 2nd of February. I know, literally unreadable. And this is from February 22nd, so almost 2 months of data that we have here. And it seems like the last one on the 22nd here is kind of a middle ground, perhaps between the two. I just thought it was crazy to see, and I thought I'd share. Current uplift data is still outdated, but early signs resemble the 2011-2012 unrest when the ground rose up to 14 centimeters without eruption. More data is needed to confirm if this trend is going to continue. Please note, none of this data on either of these maps are from the current events that we're seeing in 2025. Some resources have stated that this uplift is similar to what happened in 2011 and 2012, where there was a vertical rise of up to 14 centimeters. The unrest was marked by an increase of microseismic events lower than 3.2 in magnitude. You can see where the ground was uplifted towards the north and center of the Santorini caldera, and it seems to be happening again, but I still haven't found any conclusive evidence. Some updates on the population in Santorini and the nearby area. All schools remain closed on Santorini in the Thera district, on Ios, Anafi, and Amorgos. They were going to reopen on the 21st, but now it's been pushed to the 28th. We'll see what happens on the 28th. We'll reconvene then, right? There's been no mandatory evacuation notice, but 11,000 of the 15,000 permanent residents are suspected to still be off of the island. They are creating an emergency evacuation port in case there's significant earthquake movement so that the residents can depart safely. Lastly, I just thought this was notable, but the island of Anidros is moving at 7 millimeters per day westward, which 7 millimeters a day, that's not even what most tectonic plates move in a year. So this is quite unprecedented, very notable, crazy really. We don't fully understand what this means yet or if it's truly magmatic, but it is a rate of movement that surpasses what we saw in 2011-2012. Currently, it's not suspected to indicate any imminent volcanic eruption, but it is something that we'll keep an eye on. For the recap, this week seismic activity is decreasing, but major adjustments are still happening beneath Santorini. We saw a decrease in large magnitude earthquakes moving at depths between 5 and 20 kilometers, with surface quakes ceasing. The strongest quake this week we saw was a 5.1, and most of these are happening along the fault lines near Anidros Island. We saw our new station we've been watching on the live stream, Thera, which is close to our previous Sant station. Seismograms show surges starting on February 19th lead to fewer large earthquakes. The data we saw this week shows we might be nearing the end of this activity, but it's unknown. Uplift data still limits some conclusions, yet some sources still suggest similarities to the 2011-2012 uplift. There is still no confirmation of magmatic activity as tectonic adjustments continue. Schools remain closed in the area at least until February 28th, and in Santorini and in surrounding islands. There's no mandatory evacuation, but 11,000 of 15,000 permanent residents remain off the island. There is an emergency evacuation port under construction for potential major seismic events. Anidros Island, where the quakes are centralized, has been moving westward 7 millimeters per day, which is faster than most tectonic plates move in a year. There's still no current signs of imminent volcanic eruption, but it's still being closely monitored. Overall seismic activity is decreasing, but ground adjustments are still ongoing. Uplift data and Anidros movement remain the most unusual aspects to watch. That's all for this week's update. If you want to see how this unfolds in real time, check out my live stream by clicking on my face below. If you found this helpful, please drop a like, and if you have any comments, suggestions, or anything that you found was interesting, please leave it in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. I hope everyone remains safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.